All right, welcome to Zen One podcast. I have Colin Ambler today. Colin, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Man, I can't even put in my head how you've been a Zen customer for 6 years, and only on Monday when we talked and you said you launched a new product, I'm like, you should be on Zen One podcast. That just doesn't make any sense to me. How did I miss that?
Yeah, yeah, it got fast tracked. I know we met you in Chicago, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, maybe at a convention, and I was at the infancy stage there, and I was like, man, I got to tell Tiger when this thing's ready, and now it's pretty ready, and so the timing was good.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I love when people take their sweet time to build the product, not like me. I was running around the dental space telling people, what am I going to build? And it took me a while to do. We're still building, right? But I got everybody excited. So, but I have my own share of mistakes that I made. But today's podcast is about you, not about me. Um, Dude, these numbers are insane. Owner operator of 14 ops now office, 50 employees. But let me actually take a step back about your career. Previous life, you've been a CTO helping build technical products, tech products for the athletics and trainings. You left that job in 2017 to join your wife, which is one of the best combinations in dentistry when spouses join. Dude, I can't explain. Like, some of my best offices is when spouses are part of it.
Right.
It's amazing, right? I understand there's some complications of like driving home and not being able to talk to each other, right?
Mhm.
So that probably happens once a month or sooner or longer time. But still, you left the job to help your wife build an office. When I visited you guys were still scrambling. But Noble Dentistry today is 14 operators, 50 staff members, two managers, probably a bunch of associates. You've been a Zen customer for 6 years, and then you got bored and you said, I'm going to build the Team Care software, which you're now a founder of and creator, and you operate with about 40 offices. This is awesome, man. Like, I want to hear more about this. What did I miss?
Yeah, thank you so much. Great introduction. You didn't miss much. I mean, I want to talk about all those things, but I think we connected most recently because you're somewhat of an idol to me. It's like I look at you, and I knew when you started this, I was one of the early adopters of your software, and I was like, man, this feels such a need in the marketplace. Managing inventory supplies and the collaboration aspect of it amongst staff, and you've been great bringing it to market. I've been a happy customer all along. And so as I've gotten further along with my own project and development, I'm like, man, I really got to talk to Tiger about some advice, learn from the things that he's done and your successes and failures. So let's get into some of the nuts and bolts of that and stuff now. Yeah, my product is centrally focused around staff engagement. I think when we started our practice, we were a scratch. We just had three operatories, and we took a lot of good advice from a lot of different people about how to build, how to grow the office, how to grow the business. And like you said, I think some of the most successful offices I've seen do have in common that husband and wife duo, or at least dentist and spouse, or like that combination where I think there's a gap often in the offices that I work with that the people are producing in the back, and the doctors are most likely the owners, and they get they're doing about their day, but they're not really conscious about what's going on in the front office. They're not really knowing. I think there's a lot of office owners that just think the front desk, sit around and do nothing and wait for the patients to come in, and sometimes that might be true. But a lot of what I was doing was trying to connect the dots and create transparency, create accountability, and more importantly, like excitement and motivation to like crush it in the office. And technology, like as you know, is pretty good at collaborating. Everyone can work off of a shared system, and so as our office has started to grow and pick up traction and really scale, like the volume of patients and the tasks, the operations that go into it behind the scene to make sure lab cases are checked in, or to make sure we keep up with hygiene reactivation, or to know which doctors are performing, or which front desk treatment coordinators are getting cases closed and scheduled. Like all of these really common tasks um, presented challenges at scale. There wasn't really tracking mechanisms and easy to use collaborative systems to make these things easy. And with my background in building tech products, I was like, man, I got to follow in Tiger's footsteps and fill this need for the industry.
Yes, crush your own niche, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. When was the moment that you marinated the idea in your head, sketches and things like that, and then what was the trigger to say, you know what, F it, I'm going to build it?
Yeah, I mean, it came in phases. I did it. I mean, I had the luxury of using our practice as like a petri dish to, roll out different MVPs and stuff like that. We work with a great company. Their name is ChrisAd. They're based in California. They do a lot of dental marketing, and they also give you a lot of playbook items of like, hey, here's how you can really grow and scale a practice. And I owe a lot of credit to them. They had a lot of these systems that were kind of written down and described, but never something that was like out of the box, able to use. And some of the basic setup was like, the recall list. For anyone out there listening that does recall list, I think the most common antiquated system of it is like, okay, you go into your Dentrix or your EagleSoft and you print out a list of the continuing care, and you start to tell your staff to like, write in the margins whether you called that patient and cross them off the list, and then people want to make like, where's the list? How do I get to it? And they're combing through pages, and there's no reporting over who made those calls and if they had successful outcomes, and who's really working hard at this and who's not. And so this like reactivation, that's what we call it, like system, was something that like had a lot of growth potential. There's a lot of people that fall off and cancel, and for me to like, I just started pulling the list automatically. And so like, you could say, show me all the patients that are due, and then you can make calls against them and follow-up calls. And our staff really, we ranked them on a leaderboard: who made the most calls, who had the most successful outcomes, who booked the most appointments. And we started to incentivize and reward that and say, listen, whoever, we've done it differently over the years. But it really dawned on me. That was like the light bulb went off, and I was like, man, people really like to be recognized for the work that they're doing and the performance that they're having. And as a dental practice, I'm like, I want to reward that person. Like we'll have people, like I have offices that are using it, saying like, hey, this is awesome. My staff is asking me if I can work extra hours to make more reactivation calls so that I can be first on the leaderboard. And the practice owners are loving it, because it was previously like, I've heard people speak and they're like, people would rather take gum off the street than make these reactivation calls. And now all of a sudden,
Right.
like the prism has shifted and people are getting excited about it. And they're getting rewarded. They're getting
Yeah.
extra money for it. And it's something that's really beneficial to the practice to keep the hygiene schedule full. So that's kind of one example, and we've done it across different parts of the practice, and it changes the culture. It makes people excited to do stuff, and there's many like gamified or like incentivized things that they can do that are good for the practice and exciting for the staff.
Yeah. One of the cool things about this product when I saw it, it addresses the one of like big misconceptions in dentistry that we all come across. You always meet people that say, well, I work in the back. For me, the back of the office is my environment, right? And so I would hear constantly, well, these dental assistants are lazy, or nobody wants to do this, or nobody wants to do that. And then I go back and I say, can I see a list of primary responsibilities for dental assistants in your practice and a list of like above and beyond? Like, can I see just these two things? So if I would join your practice as a dental assistant, like I can go and say, all right, take out the trash, clean instruments, turn over rooms. These are my core responsibilities. And what would be above and beyond? What would you say as a doctor would be, oh my God, you blow my mind, right? And
Mm-hmm.
99% of the offices like don't have that. And so then I look at them and I say, it's kind of hard to go around and say that these dental assistants are lazy when there's no list, there's no nothing, right? So there's no checklist. They just don't know what they're doing a lot of times. And they're thrown into this back office with sharks of like existing dental assistants who are like, oh my God, the cassette is not ready. The instruments is not ready, right? So like all these things, and but you're flipping it on the other side and saying, no, everybody's excited. Everybody, they're bad actors. Don't get me wrong. I've seen some of dental assistants that I would never hire if I would have a dental office, but majority of them are amazing people. Like I talk to them every day, right? So young, old, middle, doesn't matter. They're great people. They just need guidance. A lot of times they need a little bit of incentive to go forward, right? And so I feel like you're solving that problem.
Yeah, hopefully so. I mean, I think a lot, like kind of what you're saying is like, and I go back there in our office, like there's certain people that just, man, like they're everywhere. They're doing all the intangible things. And I played sports in college. I played lacrosse. It was a team of 40 people, and not everyone's a goal scorer. You know, not everyone's like showing up in the box score after the game. But there's certain people that ran between the lines, and like, man, they were everywhere. And like I like to bring some of that. You know, we do have a checklist module, and people's, you know, the cream rises to the top, and everything that we have within the product is like, once you start to quantify some of these things and put a metric behind it where you're really measuring against like an individual person employee's contributions, your gut feelings are typically validated by the data. You know, you're like, man, I knew that Kayla was the one that was doing all those checklists behind there. And sure enough, you know, I can prove it now. And I can reward Kayla. You know what? Because she stands out above everyone else. And I want Kayla to keep doing those things and not lose motivation, you know, just because she thinks nobody notices her. And so I think the visibility and the transparency is pretty cool too. People like to be recognized for doing a great job. And in terms of incentivizing, sometimes we found that money really does that. Sometimes we found just like people really enjoyed to just kind of know that they're doing the best. Like they're you know working hard and it's being noticed. And
Yeah.
so I think for dental assistants and front office people, like most practice management systems, if you're a doctor, you're a hygienist, a lot of those metrics do become quantified. It's like your production or your number of patients. But DAs and front desk, like they don't really exist in the practice management softwares. They get looked over in a way. And so yeah, it's closing that gap for sure.
Yeah. It's a good point. You reminded me, I don't remember which podcast I listened to, but there was somebody saying nobody gets up in the morning and say, oh man, I'm gonna suck today.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's just not happening, right? So I think it's pretty cool that you're doing it. Can you talk about the types of incentives that you have within a platform, and maybe a little bit mechanics of how it works and how you set it up and things like that?
Sure. Yeah. So again, you know, I fell on top of like a lot of the research that was already been done. I felt fortunate that this company I mentioned, Chris had the guy, the founder, his name's John Christensen. He's been in the business of dental consulting management systems for like 40 years. These guys really like wrote the book on a lot of things and said, hey, this is the best tried and true system that we've come up with. And I had the, you know, ability just to like codify that so that it could be a ready out of the box system. Like I didn't have to recreate the wheel on all these incentive models. Although, you know, one of the things I am still on the mission to do is to make them very customizable for each practice owner. Each practice owner definitely has an appetite for, I want to heavily incentivize stuff, you know, or I want to, you know, experiment with this things at a little bit level. So, but to answer your question, some of the most common ones, um, you know, the platform is role based. There's a hygienist role, there's a doctor role, there's a front desk role, and there's an assistant role. And all those can be individually, you know, used. Like hygienists often get paid per hour, but we can optionally pay them a bonus per patient. We can optionally pay them what we call a surge patient. Like when it gets really busy for us at 5 o'clock at night, sometimes the hygienist like really got to hustle around. And we call it a surge patient. Like you really hustled, you saw two patients within that hour. And every time you see one of those surge patients, we give a bonus of like $20. And it really makes the hygienist feel good. Like, you know what, my day wasn't crazy. And sometimes it can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Like, people can focus on that 1 hour when it got really busy, and that's what ruined their day. But if they have that kind of incentive to just kind of keep that, you know what, it was really busy then, but these guys, I made an extra $100 in it, and so it's cool, it's good. I think that that's like one that's been really effective for us. um, we have goals. Like every kind of metric that we have within the practice is goal based. The practice, and this really maybe ties into some of the Zen stuff that I'm interested in talking with you about. Zen has a budget goal. It's like for supplies, you guys want to stay within budget. Everything sort of should have that sort of target value, whether it's reactivation calls, production, collections, doctor number one, doctor number two, everything is pretty assignable. And we reward people for achieving goals similarly. So different people can be involved in a goal, and let's say the office production goal, we're going to include all the office, and we're going to bonus $10 for every $1,000 we are over goal, and everyone gets it, and everyone has visibility into that goal. Everyone sees how close they're tracking to it, and as the goal crosses that threshold, they start to see what their numbers are. And I think my take on incentives is that they work really well when people have their own ability to contribute or control like the destiny of it. And I think that even again with supply stuff, I think there's like moments throughout the day when maybe you could be really careless with supplies and squeeze out that tube, and be wasteful. Or if you're kind of have like a back in your mind, like, man, we're really close to goal, let me be really careful with this. Those are the little things that, and like almost the intangible things that are hard to track, but we want to kind of shift that behavior towards having consciousness over that stuff. And it can show up in production for dental assistants, like, you know what, I don't care. Let's just do those fillings later. We don't have time for it now. Versus an assistant that's motivated and incentivized by production metrics. They're like, you know what, we got that. Let's just do it right now. And the patient's in and out. So if you want some more examples, I can give it to you about like different role-based ones for doctors, for front desk. But we're really exploring a lot of those things like every day. It's like interesting to look at how different types of incentives really perform, and we're doing it in multiple offices, and we're figuring out what works, and then we're recommending it to those offices like, hey, this really worked over here, I think you should try this incentive. And often I think incentives, we found best use case when they're changing, that people don't get accustomed to the same incentive every single month, that they're used
Interesting.
to kind of be reactive to what the practice needs. Hey, we had a really bad collection month last month, we got to catch up, let's incentivize this goal kind of thing, and get back on track.
Got it. Can you give a specific example of an incentive program that you implemented? What are the details and what the outcomes that you've seen? Maybe your practice would be easier to use from the example standpoint.
Yeah, we have a couple tried and true that are rolling. We do a contest every month for reactivation calls. Reactivation calls, again, we have this list that's constantly curating based off of who's due for their hygiene, and people
And
fill
that's
in
through your
dead time.
software.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so like there's a call list, and it's like people take responsibility for a call and say, I left a voicemail for this patient. I reached this patient. We scheduled an appointment. And so, I think incentives are interesting. Like even I think there's a culture of like sports betting going on in some way where people like to parlay stuff. Where it's like, hey, I bet a little bit on this guy, a little bit on this guy. But I think it's interesting when employees have availability, accessibility to lots of different ones. Hey, like I'm involved in the reactivation contest. I'm involved in the office bonus. I get this and that. Like throughout their day, it makes it engaging. We have an iOS and an Android app that gives people like transparency into their stuff. and it makes people align to like the practice performance and what the goals of the practice are. Whereas otherwise, I think it kind of falls on deaf ears. It's not close enough to home. So to answer your question, we do a constant incentive contest on
Reactivation.
reactivation calls. We
Okay.
do our doctors get paid on a percentage of their production and things, and so they have transparency into those. There's a tiered bonus that the more they produce, they get a greater percentage of those dollars at higher levels. We do a hygienist, like I mentioned, that it's a surge patient. If they see more than one patient within the same hour, they get bonused on the second or third patient if it becomes really busy. We've done a contest on case acceptance for front desk. We have a module that the front desk inputs treatment plans, and we track against what's been presented and what's been completed. And we really want to give people an incentive to see that their treatment plans that they present to patients get followed through and get completed. And so we'll have a contest for the front desk on completed treatment plans. But I think the key is that we've really made tight integrations with the practice management softwares, because otherwise the inputs of these things are and the tracking of these things are like too cumbersome. It's too hard to keep track of every single treatment plan that went through and which doctor and if it was completed. But the technology of the practice management, you can really extract a lot from when you set it up that this treatment gets completed and stuff like that. So um, yeah, I can tell you more if you want
Yeah. I'm
about the
curious
incentive.
uh, at what stage the office is ready for your software. So what I'm thinking
Hmm.
is, let's just
Question.
say I have an office that on my mind. They got one doctor, two front desk, a spouse who is an operator, um, one hygiene, three assistants. They have no time to even eat the lunch, right? And so if something cancels, they're like, yes, let's go.
Yeah,
We can eat, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so if I go to them and I'm like, hey, I've got this software, they're like, right?
yeah,
Hypothetically, I don't know. So where's
yeah.
the sweet spot?
Yeah, I think there's a big gamut of practices that have been really attracted to the software, and on one side of the spectrum, there's offices that are struggling. Not so much in your case, in the example you made, but in some cases, practices are like losing patients. Like the practices are on a downward trajectory,
The back
and
door, meaning their existing patient base or the number of new patients?
most often I see that practices have patient retention issues.
Retention. Okay, the back
Like
door.
you're saying, like the back door is bigger than the front door. Like you're saying, we're bringing
Yep.
in 10 new patients, but we lost 20, and they're trying to keep patient retention. And so some of the patient retention stuff, fundamentals, like we have a checkout process where we check out the patient, and one of the things that gets really focused on is did the person get set up for a future hygiene appointment? And we assign like individually accountability of like, well, front desk number one, you did these 10 checkouts. Front desk two, you did these checkouts. Tell me about your pre-appointment rate of each of these people. And putting, because I think offices struggle with pre-appointment in terms of like, 6 months in the future, all the patients are gone and they're starting to look around like, well, where, when, where did we lose these? And making a daily system that people are conscious of pre-appointment to me is one of the building blocks of like a growing practice. You got to make sure that you're retaining patients. It's such a critical aspect. You have to accumulate patients to grow. And so we make that like a really big focus. But to your example of a practice that's like so busy, I think for and practices like that have scaled up too. Sometimes these internal systems, like you, people want to do reporting. I have offices that are like, man, I'm spending so much time pulling reports and trying to track these metrics that like I barely have time to do anything else. And the automation of this stuff, of like just knowing your numbers without having to do any work about pulling reports, I think has been a time saver. And for that practice, it sounds like they need to grow. Like, it sounds like they need to add some staff, add some rooms, like take the pressure off of like a limited number of staff. I don't know if they have ability to, but I think that was one of the secrets in our practices, trajectory, and still to this day, is we felt that moment when we're saturated, we're swamped. And I think, if my software can solve any problem, one of them would be about staff retention too. Patient retention is important, but it has to go hand in hand with staff retention. And I found that when staff are swamped and, like, they got no bandwidth left even to eat, it's like, how long is that sustainable for? And so I think that, one of the things that we try to do is look at capacity levels and say, hey, when's it appropriate to like hire the next person and things like that. We try to automate front desk stuff so that it's easier. But I think, staff are happy when there's like, a healthy like level where they're not too swamped, but they're not too bored either. And I think some of that relies on the practice manager to get ahead of staffing, to like build the ops before you're at max capacity, to hire the next front desk before the next 100 patients arrive, so that you're not in that position. And I think it's, if people are incentivized and they're conscious of like their incentives and things like that, they tend to be happier. And it's like, it's part of staff retention. We've had people for like 6-7 years. I'm sure a lot of offices do, but I think this is a modern way of giving people merit for the stuff they're doing and making sure that they stay happy and like motivated.
Yeah, that's really cool. What do you tell people, especially? I mean, obviously, this is not going to work for a DSO, right? So they depending on which one, but they don't have a line item in the budget to do incentive program for their employees, right? It's not going to be in their
Yeah.
HR. But for a private practice, for a doctor, what would be your argument on why they should have it? Because I mean, I can imagine somebody will say, I already pay them $18.50 an hour. Like, why would I add something on top of it? Like, I can see this argument.
Yeah. So the education that we've been given about this stuff is like, if you, and this is very business-esque, but if you took your total amount of production, let's call it like $100,000 a month, and you looked at your, exams or hygiene program, and you divided that. So you had 100 hygiene patients and $100,000 a month. Let's say that on those terms, the practice averages about $1,000 per patient. You with me?
Yeah.
So the argument says like, well, listen, if you're averaging $1,000 per patient, then every additional patient that you add, you should expect somewhat of a similar average. And so, I think there's a tendency with staff to maybe like, you know what, I'm paid hourly, whether this place sees another patient or not, doesn't concern
What
me. I
difference?
still get I
Yeah.
still get paid. And a small amount of investment can really result in a very large amount of practice growth. If you follow those guidelines, that reactivation call, you can make 10 calls and you'll probably get 2 or 3 patients. That's about average. That could result in $2 or $3,000. And if you're paying, in incentives, we'll pay you $5 for every one you get scheduled. Like, $5 to get 1,000 is a pretty good return. And if people do
Yeah.
it, and you have this distributed model where like, wow, all my staff can start making calls, and they
Yeah.
can drive my hygiene program, to which point, my hygienists, they're not always paid hourly either, because if they get busy, they get paid more to be busy. And so instead of the hygienist being mad at the front desk, they end up collaborating and saying, hey, yo, let's get on the same page here. You make the calls, book the appointments, I'll do them, and we'll both get bonused. And the practice owner is typically happy because, number one, he didn't have to really manage that interaction. He didn't have to look over anyone's shoulder and micromanage they say the best management system is a good incentive model, where things can self perpetuate and drive on their own. And so that's where really I've seen the magic of this thing, where you have combinations of things across roles that like cultivate into that like excitement and that like interest in keeping the practice busy and crushing numbers and getting rewarded for it.
Right. And I feel like every office, every private practice will have some sort of form like, hey, this is our goal. Let's crush it, right? Like I mean, I go to many offices and I see this temperature looking thing like
Yeah,
50K, 75K, right? So like, and then they use the markers to fill this
yeah,
thing in.
yeah,
So I mean, I assume that there are things like that in every office where trying to hit the goal, and reactivation goals would be one of them. So either you want it or not, you have like the program. Maybe it's not an incentive program, but you have a growth program within your practice. And maybe that ties back to the conversation we had about your core responsibilities and above and beyond. So like, should you expect your hygienist to, on the downtime to go and do some calls? Well, that would be above and beyond, and you can define that in your SOPs, right? The standard operating procedures. Or what's the core responsibilities? A quick question for you: is there anything like that for dental assistants in your software, or it's primarily for hygiene and providers in the front office?
Um, I haven't done a lot of exclusive things for dental assistants yet, and it's like definitely a burning need,
Got to
and it's
fix
coming.
that.
I
These are
think
my people.
we'll be working together on this one. I think, but we have some all office models, like you're saying. It's not uncommon to have the whiteboard in the back with the thermometer bubble, and yeah, like this automation, like nobody has to go back and put their palm on that thing anymore. It's it's modern, it's like this just thing just
Yeah.
moves itself. And so we involve the assistants in the office goals. Like every office person gets included in like all office goals. But like I mentioned, there's certain things that are specifically assignable to the hygienist, to the doctor, etc. And the assistant is a tough one, because I think, like we said, like they kind of are the intangible glue that work everything together. And it's not right that they just get dogged on the stat sheet every day. And so,
So let's work on it together. I think we
talking to
can.
me the other day, like I really think I like when they're really conscious about lab cases. Like I don't know about the office
Mhm.
you see, but like we've had
Yep.
this shelf of lab cases that like patients cancel, never come back, this and that. And so I've had mechanisms in there where the assistants are the ones going through, and magically out of nowhere they got a crown delivered that was otherwise forgotten about. And like that should show up. The assistants are the ones making that production happen. And I like what you're saying about this, the supplies. Like that's a huge thing. It's like the supply usage and the ordering savviness about like I think you mentioned an example about ordering 2 Calibra versus 4, and like people being mindful of their just consumption.
Budget.
That stuff's hugely critical. We've busted through our supplies budget before, and we've been really disciplined at other times, and it makes a huge difference to the bottom line. And like, I'd be more than happy to make the incentive for the DAs that are like keeping that in check.
Yeah.
But
I
you
think
tell me,
for
like,
one of the first things we're going to have to come up with a core responsibility list. So every office that signs up with you and they add an assistant, there's like a checklist of core responsibilities and then above and beyond. And so like the lab cases would be above and beyond, right? And then a clear definition, like being within a budget. Is it a core responsibility? Some doctors argue with that it should be a core responsibility, but I have offices that say, like one of the things we're it's in our roadmap is to build an incentive program for DAs that are managing the budget to say, hey, if you saved throughout a quarter $1,000, 10, 15, 20, 50%, some offices would pay 50% of savings back to their DAs in the form of an Amazon gift card. So all
yeah,
we need is DA's email address and boom, it shows up there, right? So we've done it. And so to me, it's like a no brainer. But I mean, once in a while I get offices like, why would I share Okay, like
Yeah,
it's your thing. It's how you
yeah.
run it. But to me, it's pretty cool when offices can set it up and reward their DAs.
I'm totally down for it. I'd love to work with you on it. I think some of the things that I've also started to bring into this, we have like a news feed
Mm-hmm.
of just like things that are happening throughout the office. And one of those, I forgot to mention this earlier, is this thing I'm calling praise. And anyone around the office can add praise, and it's meant to just be like, if you notice someone that did something great, that pulled that lab case off the shelf, and what you just want to kind of recognize that person, it goes in as praise. There's an alert that you can subscribe to if you want to get the praises. It's on your news feed. And I think, like, when you start to like celebrate those things amongst peers, it's powerful. It
Mm-hmm.
encourages that same future behavior. You're like, you know what? I
Yeah,
got recognized for that.
especially if you
Like,
can especially if
I
you can
got,
attach the picture, right? So
yeah,
like I can see
yeah,
it. Somebody picked up the garbage where it wasn't supposed to be or something, and somebody noticed. They take
yeah,
a picture and say, "Hey, like Amanda, that was so cool you did that."
yeah. And other people on their newsfeed, like, yo, the person got 10 high fives. Like, everyone's talking to me about the trash I picked up. It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
just did it
Mm-hmm.
because it needed to be done. But now we're celebrating those things around the office and making it like, a fun little social thing. Like, I think that's
Yeah,
cool.
that
And
is
and it can
awesome.
happen in all shape of forms. But it's about like, making your team like, and I think what happens is the people that maybe walked past that piece of trash 3 times and didn't pick it up, are looking at the person that got recognized for it and like, you know what? I'm going to pick up that piece of
Yeah,
trash this time.
yeah,
It's like it sets
yeah,
the standard of what behavior should be.
yeah. Quick question, Colin. Do you have a cleaning crew, or it's part of DA's job to clean the office in your office?
We do. We have a cleaning crew.
You have a cleaning crew
They come, I think, 3 times a week.
3 times a week. So DAs don't clean the rooms.
I
I
mean,
mean,
we
sorry, they clean the rooms. They don't clean the office. They don't clean the toilets.
no, they do.
Okay,
So like, okay, you tell me more of your question. I guess you have a route.
it's
You
not a
have
gotcha question. I hope
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not.
yeah.
It's
But
just
but you
I'm
have
trying
some
to understand.
weaknesses. Yeah. We clean the office as best we can every night. We make sure every office is clean. There's no floss or whatever, on the
Yep,
floor.
yep.
But then
Clinical.
we have the cleaning crew come in and like just kind of get in every nook and cranny and
Okay.
make it smell like bleach. To make sure it's like game ready for the next day. I
Yeah,
think so. What are you finding in offices in your space with cleaning?
I'm having a hard time lately. Again, I don't want to put any of my offices in on the spot. I just think that it's not economically productive to use your DAs to wash floors and clean the bathrooms. So I have two problems with that, and I hope again doctors don't get me the wrong way. And I'm not trying to say, well, DAs don't deserve to clean the rooms. They are like, and they will clean the rooms. They will clean the clinical stuff. They'll have to take the trash out from the operatories, and I do this when I go to one of my offices here. It's easy. You just take it out, boom, clean the rooms. It's done. I do have a problem when DAs have to wash floors, wash bathrooms for two reasons. One, I would much rather have above and beyond incentive program for them that directly benefits the profitability of the office or operations or efficiency of the office, which essentially is going to be the profitability of the office, right? So like learn new system, create new SOP, train one of the new dental assistants on how to do certain things. That's where I would like the DAs to spend their time on. The second thing I don't like is we're trying to make a career path for dental assistants. And so one of the biggest things, which I hate to see, is dental assistant works at a dental office, and then she's like, "I'm going to be in the flight attendant." Why? She doesn't see the future in a dental office. Like, how is she going to grow? And at the same time, I have an endodontist in Charlotte. One of her dental assistants makes $45 an hour. How did that happen? Because she can't do a procedure without that dental assistant, right?
Yeah,
And she just so on top of it. and she'll like, I'll pay her more, right?
Yeah.
So how do we build the career path? And if we have a dental assistant starting out as a medical profession on the path to become a dental assistant, lead dental assistant, and an expert dental assistant, whatever we call, that cleaning bathroom just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah. I
It
agree with
just
you.
doesn't,
I
right?
agree.
So like, I
I
hope
hope
again nobody gets it wrong.
Yeah, so I hope I answered that question correctly. Then yes, we do have a cleaning crew. Like I don't like to see. I mean, I know that you have the Zen out. You know, it's like, did you Zen out today? You know, all your stuff. We kind of have a similar team care function where it's like, you know, they're logging their lab cases, which one got completed, which one didn't, which one's on the shelf, that kind of stuff. Like to your point, I'd much rather my staff be focused on those things than scrubbing toilets. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I think DAs, I mean, they're the glue, man. They're making the whole place go, and they're under recognized. I think we pay our assistants well. We've been told by people our DA payroll is too high, but I mostly
Yeah,
shut it off. I'm like, I don't care what you say. It's like these girls are gold.
yeah,
I mean, I'm if whoever reads this, if you guys have ideas or existing incentive models that you think are like really aligned and like appropriate for DAs, like I'm all ears. I think you know our DAs are they're always in the back helping docs. They're looking through the schedule for us, making sure cases are in, like having to move and manage some of those appointments, helping hygiene with FMX and cleaning rooms when needed. They're everywhere, and so I love that they're like the core king group to you too.
yeah. That's who we built the product for.
Yeah,
Colin, what's on your roadmap? So, like, if we were to start wrapping this up, you're building cool things. So probably the if we say what problem are you solving is the incentive, uh, like transparent, easy to use incentive software for your team. Is that going to be right if I say it that way?
I think so. I mean, I think you know we're perpetually evolving. You know, the identity of the product. I'm sure you are too. I think I like to look at it as like staff engagement, like and culture, like excitement stuff. And incentives are like a close part of that, or an integral part of that.
What's on your roadmap for the next 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, I love. So I guess we have some things related to treatment planning with the front desk. I think that a lot of offices they're generating. You know, we do a lot of stats based stuff for tracking these treatment plans and case acceptance and what got collected and things like that. But I think that even us, we're still printing off the Dentrix thing and handing it to the patient, and I think that's like an old antiquated model. And so we're putting this into a much more like web-based form where it's like we just kind of shoot the thing to the patient and they can Apple Pay, boom, done, pick their payment. Like it's beautifully presented, it's simple, it's clean, it's not like the verbose things like resin, composite, filling. Like I think a lot of the PMS generated treatment plan items are junky, and so I want to change that and make that part of an incentive model for the front desk. We have most kind of things are circling through commission, like incentives, excuse me. And so I'm going to slot in that DA's
Yeah,
incentive within the next 6 months, and we're really enhancing the mobile application. Like I think the mobile application is kind of what people engage on. You know, when they're getting push notification that Bridget just got praised for taking out the trash, or that doctor just hit his daily goal and I got a $5 bonus for it. Like the engagement that happens on an app is way cool to me, anyways. And we're even doing some of the remittance. I mean, I think when you and I talked the other day, you were talking like, man, are you integrated into payroll and stuff like that? And those questions are starting to get like asked a lot of like, well, does this put this in their bank accounts too? Because that'd be sweet. And
yeah,
so yeah, we're working it in.
yeah. That's so cool. All right. I'll link up your site, teamcaredental.com, right?
Yep.
People can book the demos, see the software, see how it works. And then I've seen your contact information on the website too.
Yep.
Okay, so people can reach out to you. This is awesome, dude. I'm so excited you're doing it. And I feel like I said, what we started with in the beginning, spouses can build the best software. Like, there's
Yeah.
so many like Flex Dental, right? That's how it was started. So a couple others. I mean, I can name a ton of them right now.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
exactly where it all
like,
starts.
believe me, I mean, I like to build stuff. It has its challenges, but I searched high and low for something that would fulfill this, and it didn't really exist. Dental's like a big space, but not that big where it's like you can just get an open dental integration off the shelf and get it into practice. Like, it takes, you want this stuff to happen efficiently so that your staff doesn't have double entry. And so we really just made it ourselves. And like my wife, she's all into it. She's a practice owner. Obviously, she gets, to see how her DAs are performing and how her hygienists, and she's given out praises and stuff like that. She's given me a lot of the roadmap every day from our practice and like what's going on back there and how we can adapt. I think that's what's made us like an ever growing practice. We have 14 rooms. We're like full all the time, and when you're at that stage, it's like the problems that you face are not like how are we going to get more patients, because that problem is almost out of control. It's like the patients are coming, like, and it's like, how are we going to service them? How are we going to make sure our staff is happy while we're working hard? How are we going to make sure that, just because we're bigger, that we don't let things fall through the cracks, that we're still on top of our game, that that our systems were actually scalable. Um, and that's where I feel like we made this platform
Hmm.
that is totally collaborative to all staff. Everyone gets on there, does their stuff, and that way it's not on any one person's shoulders. It's like everyone's contributing to make sure that each patient gets everything done correctly.
It's pretty cool. Last question. You're successful private practice owner with your wife. What nugget can you share with people that are listening? Because majority of the people that listen are going to be private practice owners. Either work at the private practice or the owners or the operators. What one nugget you can share?
Man, uh, so many. Well, I do think that I mean, there's different practices out there, fee for service, this insurance based PPOs like we are. I do think there's some sort of formula that works. It's like you have to hit a couple boxes. Um, part of it is like you got to pre-appoint your patients. You got to make reactivation calls, this and that. Um, but I guess the biggest nugget for me is man. Uh, I think it's a front desk that's aligned to hygiene. I really do. And I think that I work with a lot of practices, and a lot of offices around the country look at hygiene as a loss leader. And we got brought up where it's like, listen, man, just like welcome in patients, phone skills, like, the best. Come on in. We got great hours. We got availability. The practice that you described earlier that was like swamped, it hurts me because like we learned that lesson and we got past it where it's like and so maybe this is my biggest key lesson is like always have like one staff member extra um, in a growing model where you don't put your staff in a position where they're so overwhelmed that like you said they can't eat. We always have um, like resume or job postings out there. And to be honest, one of the things that we really advertise within our posts is our culture and our incentive programs and like how fun it is to be here working. And it is. And it's like we attract new people all the time. And when staff gets pregnant or falls in love or decides they're going to be an airplane
Moves for a
stewardess
job.
or whatever, it's like you're not at the mercy as a practice owner. And I think for small practices out there, maybe 5, 6, 8 people, it's like even a practice of our size, if you lose one person, like it can really change the daily life of the workload and stuff like that. And so we've definitely learned to be proactive with our staff. It's like without our staff and without the culture of this, like man, nothing goes. But when everyone's excited and we have sufficient amount of hands to do the work, and it's like it's a beautiful thing. We're running and we're growing, and people are making extra money, and like it can be really and believe me, like part of it, like I said earlier, is the best management system is a good incentive program, and everyone's kind of in lockstep to that. And I mean, I'm not doing a ton of the day to day stuff. I'm really proud of people stepping up and taking ownership of stuff and collaborating across roles. Like it's beautiful.
Cool.
So that,
I'm going to
I
write
guess,
it down as always. Your nugget is
yeah.
always have one extra staff member.
Pretty much. Maybe a point 0.5. It's like I know some practices are budget constrained,
No,
but
one.
if you can
You
be in
can't
a
have a point 0.5 dental assistant. Come on, you got to have one.
but you want to be opportunistic in my mind. It's like I know those practices, but the schedule's so full. We're hoping for a cancellation, like you said, and I prefer the model that it's like, come on in, we got room. Yeah, like just yes, yes, yes. I think that's but you can't grow with a limited staff. It's like you can't accommodate patients. You hate being on the phone as a front desk. No, I can't. I know you're in pain, but I can't get you until Thursday either because I don't have enough rooms or I don't have enough staff or I don't have enough whatever. And so we don't like doing that. And so we've always been proactive with building and growing the staff and keeping them
That's
happy,
awesome.
retaining them. Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Colin, thank you so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
my
your time sharing the
pleasure.
story. It's a pretty cool story. When you have updates, we're going to try to get you back to talk about the teamcaredental.com. But the Team Care is the product, which I think is very needed from what I've seen. It encourages people to actually have their team members do the necessary work instead of cleaning up the bathrooms. So I'm very
Right. Yeah.
excited about it. All right,
All right.
cool, man.
Well,
Thank you.
this was great. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to connecting with you and doing stuff for the DAs.
Same here. Thank you.
All right. See you.